We'll get going. We're running a little bit late. Thank you. I know you guys are in the field, so appreciate you coming in and doing this. So I'm gonna hand it over to Kyle.
So we're still Kyle and Travis, still from Icon. Glad everybody's back. Appreciate being welcomed back and had a good discussion with the board, and we are kind of excited to jump right in. We just spent the last hour and a half walking the school. Honestly, kind of blown away. It's extraordinarily clean and well maintained, and you know, I was trying to come in and go on this tour and like poke holes and you know why there's not more needs outside of mechanical things or electrical things, or and it's just very impressive. So I guess you know your folks that are working here are doing a phenomenal job, and I think that this community should really be proud. I mean, looking at the library, looking at the way that I mean, you go to the third floor in the science room, you know, like it's just, other than the glaring issues of fresh air and air conditioning and reliable, you know, mechanical systems, you just have so many positives. You know, the restrooms, obviously, there's another thing, but so much to be proud of. Again, it's just, we went down into the sub and it's just clean and organized and I mean, just amazing job. If I wanted to put a shelf together, like all the parts are right there. And you saw the brackets and you saw all the posts and everything. And it's just, it's kind of unreal. You know, I kept waiting for the shoe to drop and like, all right, this room is going to have some stuff, you know, and it was just all very organized. And I think that honestly, as a community member, I don't know why I would want to spend any money in this school. Because if I just walked in and all I saw is what I saw, I'd be like, this school is awesome. Because really, it really is really well taken care of. You have adequate space, you have large classrooms, you know, you have lots of great light through windows that maybe are, you know, past their useful life. But you could feel the different temperatures walking through the rooms, and you could understand where there's airflow and where there isn't. You know, your auxiliary gym that's now your main gym, and your main gym that became your auxiliary. I mean, you guys are very fortunate. Your library, again, I mean, being open to the public, having the computer lab, just how large it is, just is really nice. So I think that that's actually a problem, you know, because if you don't come in this school, you know, why would you ever think anything's wrong, you know? Or if you don't talk to a student or a staff member, if, you know, this is a pretty good time of year to be walking the school. Everything was relatively comfortable, but wow. Anyway, so we've read lots and lots of information. We've, you know, spoken with our engineering team. We've got some cool things we're going to talk about that we're going to bring to the table. But before anything started, like, just, it's really impressive. So I hope you guys realize, you know, we're in a lot of schools, and just, I don't know that I've gone into a school with a need. I would say a dollar amount need as high as this school that looks this nice. I've never seen it. Just period, the end, you know, really nice.
Yeah, we've been in a ton of schools, and this goes to some staff and maintenance here is phenomenal.
It's very clear that it's just taken care of. And even the students, you know, if the students didn't take care of their space and didn't respect the school, you could see it. And you just don't see that. Anyway, just, you guys should be proud. That's all. Just, that's not on the agenda. I just am blown away. So this is what we're going to talk about. And some of it is kind of throwing me for a loop, because I planned on walking through and seeing things that maybe were neglected, or seeing things that didn't make sense with the reports, something that was skipped, and some of the things I was expecting to see, we just didn't see. So we're gonna go through a little bit of what the process is going forward. You guys have already seen that. We've already talked about it. We've talked about it with the board. So we're going to do it kind of fast, understanding the time and understanding we want to spend time on other things. We do want to ask some specific questions And then what we found is that if we break out and quickly break out, this isn't like, we're not doing like crazy, role playing where you ask a question and get your answers. It's some quick breakout where maybe we split into 3 groups for 4 or 5 minutes. I ask you to do one thing and then we come back and we talk about it. And one person from each group would just share. So it'll be kind of efficient, but at the same point, we can get hopefully some different thoughts and different ideas and review what we've done, the things that we have kind of planned. And then ultimately you guys got to give us something to do. I've got an idea, but again, we need you to tell us exactly what you want us to do, because you've got data coming out your eyeballs, right? And I feel like, and we've already, and we'll touch on this in a second, we're already working through it, but some of the scenarios and questions, like the specific things there that you've already said, we just want that and more, because then we're going to go back and we're going to hunt that down and say, this makes sense because of this, and this is your limitation for here, but you can do it because of this, or you can't. That's the goal, is to give you all of that. And then the next meeting is literally going to be us just saying, all right, here's all your ideas. Here's what we found. Here's the costs. Here's the different ways to attack it. Okay, now what? And we're just going to keep doing that process till you guys all say, yep, that makes sense. The reason that we're not just rolling with this is because it's too much money. I think it's too much money. I think you guys think it's too much money. I told my engineers I think it's too much money. So we need to accomplish the heart of what you guys have already kind of targeted. But I feel like there's probably just a different way to do it. And that different way is what I'm hoping that we'll uncover through a second opinion. And if this engineering, company that we work with tells us, nope, this is spot on and this checks out, then that will be a different discussion. And we'll come back and we'll handle it that way. And I might be eating crow, but I do think that there's some room there, hopefully. But overall, again, just amazing, amazing school. Go through that. We have a few things, homework for us, questions and next steps. Really short agenda. In the second bullet point is like an hour. So it probably will take a bit. So I'm just going to get rolling, right? So the committee structure, we'll go through these real quick. So you guys saw this before, the assessment you've got done, you've got some maintenance plans, you guys as a committee have formed and already kicked off. I would say the one question that I do have before we move past this is, are we missing anyone at this table? So is there someone from some walk of life, some group, some representation in this community that isn't represented, so that we can go when it comes time to share publicly, we know we've got all walks, we've got all viewpoints. So are we missing anyone? Do we have people that, well, I'll stop
I think
talking.
we're missing elderly. I remember the day of the vote, we had to do a walk outside and I saw so many older people coming to the school that I have no idea who they were. So looking around, I think we're missing like 70 and above. Oh, or yeah.
It's just a point.
We're missing the grandmas and
They're the
grandmas.
ones that
Right, I would agree.
comes a lot.
It's also important to include people on this committee that, are very much naysayers against the school district, no matter what. It's nice to have folks like that, and maybe some of you are on that, no. It's nice to have those folks at the table because they help drive the discussion, and when they can be part of the solution, all the better. And so you want that interaction.
And one more
You
group.
don't need to raise your hand.
Yeah, no,
Please don't.
one more group just to think of is, does everybody here have some sort of connection to the school? Students in the school, staff member, volunteers? Does everybody have a connection to the school other than just I'm just a good community member and I just showed up because I'm a good community member? So that's the other piece, right? Is there somebody that just doesn't walk into the school normally? They might walk into the school if there was a Veterans Day or something, right? If there was not a prayer, if there was an event or something like that. So we can't fix that today. It'd be great if someone in this table is voted no on the last project. That's great. We want that. So if somebody has never been in the school other than vote, we want somebody in there. So if you guys have been in the school, then maybe we're missing someone, 1 or 2 people and I would ask you guys that maybe that's your homework, is to think about, is there somebody that would be willing to spend a little bit of time? And I would say, if we do add 1 or 2 people, we'd probably have a special meeting just to catch them up. But we really feel like the, the experienced community members, I'd say, they never miss a vote, right? So it's just, we want to make sure, and I would say you guys are all probably too young to fit that bill. And then, yeah,
I would say one group, maybe like, I don't know, maybe it shouldn't, but I don't think anybody's like a Bobcat employee. That's a pretty big
oh, for sure.
percentage chunk of the population
That's a good
of
point.
the city, and I think it's traveled pretty fast over there.
It's a very good point. Okay, I'll stop talking. Anybody else? So we'll just track that, and we'll work with maybe maybe just email to the group for suggestions, and then maybe you could reach out. And that would be really great. And then we'll spend some time to catch folks up. So community committee, you got that. We're already settled. We're here. We're going to spend the next few meetings talking about just the information that you guys already have, understanding the budgets and the tax impacts. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, and I'd say the green and the brown or whatever color, those meetings will blur together depending on what it is that you guys come up with to change, questions that you're asking. At the end of the day, we're going to have a recommendation. At the end of that, our traditional process is to do a public survey. I'd say that you guys have kind of done that, and I would say that maybe there's an asterisk there, and we can get to maybe the end of this process, and we'll talk about what that looks like, and if that's something that the district wants to do, or if you guys are like, nope, we figured it out, let's go. I do feel like you have some good survey information. It's just a little bit different than what we normally do. So that's in a nutshell what we can spend the next 3 to, it could be 3 to 5 to 6 meetings. It really just depends on you guys. You guys have a ton of information. I've gone through almost every page of it. It's, I was speaking with our engineering partner, and it was almost too much information. It was almost like, you've got all the information out there, but, understanding that I've got it all right now, and this is spread out over years, but just to condense this, and I'd say this is something that we will strive to do for our next meeting. You've got that great graphic that's kind of like the steps that have shown the different things that have happened over the decades. I think it would be great to take another crack at just a simplified, this is what the last, 5 years have been, and just what you guys have gone through, just so people can get a quick snapshot and get familiarized with all the different information. But
one thing going through all this, and I think you guys understand this too, like, I think everybody understands the issues. The surveys that you guys did indicate that both parents and non-parents, which, would mean the rest of them, but everybody has the same, they understand it's an HVAC issue for the most part. Kitchen obviously is another one. And every piece of data that we looked at, and that I looked at especially, points that everybody understands. The hiccup obviously was the tax impact. And then from what I gathered from looking at everything is there's some trust issues that obviously exist. And so as we go through this, bringing the tax impact down on whatever it is we do, and just making sure that we're transparent and we communicate. And as you guys leave here tonight and visit in the communities, it's so important that you share, the factual data so people understand this process. But I mean, from what we gathered, everybody in the community seems to understand the issues. It's just comes down to tax impact, right?
and something like, the kitchen renovation improvements, I wonder if folks who tried to dig into the weeds. So I think only people that want to dig into the weeds would probably even study this. And when you get down to the point, it's $1.8 million. So you want to dig into the weeds, but then you don't really get to dig into the weeds because it just is one line item. So that's an item there where I think questioning, okay, what's a hood? What's the proofing oven? What's the regular oven, the serving, serving stations, knocking out the walls, I think that we would try to provide you guys with just a little bit more information so that you can understand where those costs are, because I think if you just look at that number, it's like, that's a lot, right? And why is it a lot? And so if we're asking that, I think other people in the community are asking that, and I just encourage it. Anything we say is like, nope, you didn't explain that well enough. Like, that's not a time to wait. There's no question and answer, but like pump the brakes then, and that could be right now. Okay, so if there's ever a point where I say something or anyone says anything and we don't get it, like we gotta stop then. Because if you don't get it, somebody else doesn't get it. And so we just need to know. Make sense? So quickly to talk about our partners. So Prairie Engineering, they have offices in Bismarck and in Minot. We are specifically working with Josh and Caleb out of the Minot office. We work with them, we're probably working with them on 10 different K-12 projects right at this very moment. We've been working with them for 20 years. And so they understand our process, and they understand that I fear, or I would suspect that maybe there's a Cadillac in here and we need a Chevy. And so that's specifically what I asked them to do, second opinion. And actually, as soon as I started talking, he's like, you need a second opinion. Yep, absolutely. So they're right in the same boat as us. They're not expecting you guys to cut them a check. They get it. They want to earn the work just like we do. This is, again, what we do for all the different folks that we're working with. And so they have a bunch of this information. I didn't send them everything just for fear of them not returning my phone calls. So I did send them about a quarter of what they've got, of what you sent me, understanding, and I did tell them that they're getting a quarter of it. So if they need something else, chances are I have.
And they'll likely come out here, and then I can attest to Prairie too. When I was the superintendent in Beulah, we had HVAC issues as well in Beulah, and we started with coal boilers, and we went to an electric boiler, and then eventually propane. Obviously, we also had chiller issues, and so we had all the same sort of issues that you guys are having now, and Prairie Engineering came out, and they were phenomenal to work. But yes, those guys will come out here, they're not expecting a check. They will come out here and they will look at the school most likely. And just do it as a favor, because we work with them on multiple different projects. And so they are a very good company. Not speaking as Icon, speaking as a former district superintendent that had them working for school district.
And whenever, yeah, and I'd say, giving them a little bit of an opportunity to look over the information, they will be more than happy to dialogue directly with you guys so that you don't have to talk through us about mechanical and electrical things. You can take it right from the horse's mouth, and they're good folks. So that's partner one. Partner two is Athero. How do you guys think to pronounce it? Athena? Athero. So they, and I feel like you guys are really gonna appreciate this. And I feel like a big part of our homework is gonna actually be the different questions that we have for them. And it's interesting. So, we had this conversation several weeks back, and the discussion of windows or the mechanical system, which comes first. We had that chicken or egg dialogue, and then just happenstance that one of our architects in a different office had scheduled a meeting with this firm the next day, completely unrelated, and they wanted to just introduce what they do, and they're doing it all over the state, working for the state, working for NSU, and just didn't even know about it. But what they do is they use drones with crazy thermal imaging and not LiDAR to go and measure and take a 3D thermal scan of the whole building. And they get to the point where they'll actually be able to tell you. And so part of it is that they'll ask what your utility rates are, how much you've been paying. They compare it with the historical data so they know the temperatures in the area. And they will say, okay, based on the R value or the insulated value of the spec. So some traditional dual pane window would return this sort of heat capacity. They'll be able to go through and say, this window is costing you $8.37 a month, or this part of the roof is leaking. And it might be that it's something that we don't even know about. It could just be that you see a corner is warmer, and that will trigger us to actually go in and check for a spot. And this is something that I think, you know, it's a full, interactive kind of dashboard that you guys will get. And we can poke through and say, okay, it makes sense to replace this or it doesn't. And I do think the general public, if they understood the cost of the mechanical system that we're running and the cost of each specific window or wall panel, we could actually get down to where people might say, oh, that makes sense. I get it. Like, yep, we're gonna save money here. It's gonna cost us this now. Or they could say, nope, everything's great. Don't replace it. They have no vested interest in construction. All they do is inspections. They do it all over the country. They want, just like some of the survey companies and other people we use, they want to give us really good data so that we encourage other districts to hire them. So their only win is to give us good information. It's really nice. They're motivated to do this. They're doing it at a extremely reduced rate because they just want a project with us. And we're kind of getting a great situation here versus what they would normally charge. And it's something that they're coming in 2 weeks.
And
We
in
have that
May.
amount, right?
And yep, yeah, and it's $3,500. And traditionally, they charge that amount for each, like, this building system. So originally, we were thinking this was gonna be like a $10,000 ask, and I was like, I don't think that's gonna fly. He said, what do you think would work? And I said, well, how about free? And he said, well, we gotta charge something. And you can ask him, if you ever talk to him, that's exactly what I said. But I feel like you guys are gonna get so much valuable information. And it's, again, it's facts. It's not gonna be something coming out of my mouth. It's not gonna be something coming out of somebody's idea. You're gonna be able to look at each window, look at all the different areas of your building and understand how it's performing without a shadow of a doubt. And I just think that'll be an amazing tool.
So we're going to pay somebody $3,500 to come out and tell us the windows we already know are bad. At the end of May, when it's the same temperature outside as it is inside. I don't really know what kind of permission you're gonna get from that.
You know, they do it all over the country in different
I
steps,
understand the winter
so
time will make sense.
I think that they'll still be able to see that, yeah. I'm not gonna pretend to understand all the systems that work. But I can say, like, the stuff that they showed me, the stuff that they're doing for these large entities, you know, I think that it's gonna be mind-blowing to have it as facts. Right now, I think you have an opinion, and I think I frankly agree with you, but it's still just an opinion.
But if it's 65 inside the building and 65 outside the building, I'm not sure what your. information you're gonna get.
They have, that's what their systems are, they'll handle that. That's their job to do that. If they give us nothing, I can't imagine that we're gonna ever wanna use them again.
And we can have that, we can.
This contract is already signed though, you said.
And we can ask that same question. We'll get that answer.
I mean, I understand the winter time or in the middle of summertime when you're air conditioning the whole building, makes perfect sense. But when it's 65 outside and 65 inside, I don't know what you're gonna see.
We can ask them that question.
The thing that does stand out on something like this, so too, is like if the computer lab or something's down below, you get a bunch of heat coming up to the floor, like, really, no one's even there. It's more than that, though, so I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, you not kind of check, but I would say, I mean, this is something that I would hands down do, and it's something that I think is gonna be specifically for the discussion on windows and air conditioning. I don't think this could be any more relevant, understanding your building, especially because if you go up there and you go to the third floor and you walk around, it looks great. In my opinion, it looks very well maintained, taken care of. You know, I understand there's a reason it looks new, right? There's some recent work, right? But this will be able to actually tell us what the story is of the skin. And I think that's the crux of it is your problems are all skin, beyond the skin. They're deeper than the skin. And so we short of doing destructive inspections, like, we need information to allow people to understand why this beautiful space needs work. Because in my opinion, it doesn't look like it needs.
We'll get that answer.
And we will get that answer. That's a great question. But certainly something, because they're doing this in California, they're doing this all over the place in places that don't have the extremes that we have. So good question though. So those are the two things that we're going to work through. The discussions with Prairie will happen much sooner. But the work with the drone discussions and that data will come, and I think it will be really enlightening as we work through all of this. Any other questions? That's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, they're not paying us to say their name. We don't have any connection to them whatsoever. Like, we just,
What is their name again?
I was trying to look at it.
HPHERO.
Say that again?
I'll look up the exact- I printed it out.
AETHERO.
It's in this stuff.
no.
No.
Yeah.
No, but they're working with the state of North Dakota, they're working with NSU, they're working with a bunch of large entities, they go all over the country, they do inspections, there was a hospital that had a bunch of, issues from the design team, and was just basically, they knew it was leaking and they couldn't figure out how, oh, here it is. Yeah, just pass it off, yeah. Anyway, so just something that I personally think will be very informative.
It does say right here that thermal imaging drones can provide valuable environmental data about buildings, even if the outside temperature is the same as the inside. They can detect heat discrepancies, insulation issues, air leaks, moisture intrusion, even electrical problems.
Yeah, I think we will all be pleasantly surprised, and I think it will be dollars well spent. But the proposal is public, I mean, you guys can all take a look at it, we can share it out with folks. But I do know, they're bringing multiple people down here for multiple days.
Meetings.
Yeah, they're losing money doing this, so they want to give us good information. Same as we want to give you guys good information so that we can give the community good information. So, key takeaways. What just sort of, Travis, do you want to?
Sure, yeah, you've been talking. Me too.
Yeah.
Thanks. I mean, this is coming right from, obviously, the studies and everything that you've done. Obviously, we have failing HVAC system, your chiller failed in 2003. You have inefficient windows, the kitchen. I think the big question the last time we were here is exactly what Kyle just said, is why is the kitchen costing that much? That's something that we will dive into, and we'll figure out why that's costing so much. Sewer piping obviously is another issue, and you looked at that one sheet that Kyle just held up a little bit ago, your deferred maintenance. The problem with, and we're not here to cut anybody down, but the problem with that is it's one line item. There's nothing underneath of each of those, so you don't necessarily know what's included, what's not included, right? We've looked at your past bond referendum. We obviously looked at the surveys associated with those. You also did a survey where it was just board and admin that did a survey. We studied that. You had a 42% yes vote. We feel that the district, or that there was direct and indirect conversations. And the surveys indicate, why it failed, but is there any other reason other than what we talked about, maybe some trust, maybe a tax impact? What other things are major items up there of what we know, and why, in your guys' mind, do you think that failed? And I think that's like probably one of the most important questions that we have to answer here tonight is, what do we think went wrong the first time, so we don't repeat it the second time?
Well, I think you said it, trust and development.
Those are the two main things. Would you agree with that?
And at the same time, kind of what you guys are describing too, it's just how the info is put out there and it's not really detailed out to exactly what it actually is. So everyone just sees a dollar numbers and it's like, oh, no way. So that's where the trust issue comes up to.
That probably explains why there's. Right, yeah. Maybe not the detail.
Oh, you ask, why is a kitchen $1 million it was? One answer, I mean, there has to be an answer to that, right?
And there might have been, I'm sure there was an answer, but just how easy was it for the public to find?
I mean, would you have had done a full-blown estimate to get that answer? That was the problem. People wanted
Well, I mean,
the number.
I was at all the meetings and the answer was we have to pass it to get the money, to get the bids, to get the, real number.
Yeah,
And that's valid, and I think we talked about kitchen equipment, hopefully did, but there's a couple of different kitchen design vendors. And that's a situation where of some of the items that don't need to be fully designed to get bids on, that's one of the items where we would say, okay, we have two different ones that we work through pretty regularly, and we would just say, how much? And they would give us their opinion. Now, it's not a bid, but it's one of the few items, that and theater equipment, where it's like the national price is the national price, right? And so I can promise you, there is one thing where we will say, yep, we're gonna replace this, and we're gonna have a budget for this much is gonna be cooking, this much is gonna be refrigeration, this much is gonna be casework. We're not gonna have the casework design, but we're gonna have a budget for those items. And again, that's not even, we're gonna use our partners to do that, because you should have that information. But what we wanna do here now, and I don't know what the best way to do this is, but it would be great if we could take like 4 minutes. And you could, what did we miss? And is there something that someone didn't mention for why this didn't pass? And if we don't need 4 minutes, this is maybe one of the items where if you guys don't want to do this, we don't have to, but I do think that there's some validity to kind of splitting up and just making sure that we didn't miss something. Okay, let's just do that. So let's just halfway down, let's 4, and let's take just 3 or 4 minutes. And is there something in the facility that we didn't talk about? Whether it's mechanical or something that didn't get mentioned, and is there some reason that it has failed that didn't get mentioned? All right, we're gonna break, 4 minutes. The other ones, we're gonna allow a little bit more time. This one, we're gonna go fast. Maybe, yeah, we're gonna see.
they'll be on anyway.
But there's a process, right? Maybe they can give ideas. This skills process for classes, just.
Unless when someone needs.
So disciplining people.
Stuff that kind of.
Without
National standard.
Oh, they just didn't throw it right at a board. How do they?
I think if you get new construction.
There's
options. Big house or all construction.
You're not good.
No matter how much. We had to go walk and get from that level. People that came to school, they never came to any, and I think some people were confused by the online calculator. And some people thought their monthly payment was going to be sky high, and it was hundreds of dollars less. I don't know how many.
But I did. It's like.
Right away, I'll get it. This is. But I think that would come back. This is not cost.
Yeah.
We.
Yeah, that should have been broken.
But no, the first time.
And. It should have. Obviously,
John, you're.
Well-
Even like in our meetings that we did.
That's right. Yeah, I know, yeah. So it is.
So I have.
You do this is the way it should be done, that's what you. And this is.
That's what. That's what.
Oh, I mean, I. They do what they want to do, and the numbers are. Like you said, the cops.
That's not bad.
Yeah. That's the little building.
So I'm curious.
Yes. That's like that little thing. 1 year.
That's not her role.
You guys are ready to wrap up?
Yeah. We do have the data. And I saw it. You never get that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying this, yeah, it's just, this way, that's on. And you can take that, we could just start all the way to the.
Everybody ready to come back? If you guys could, point a speaker. Point a speaker, please. Maybe if you guys wanted to start.
Yeah, sure, we love starting.
Yeah, I could tell.
So I think one thing that I brought up too is that other company probably had too much information for the couple of meetings that I went to. All of a sudden, they'll kind of go those topics and the next topic, and then, well, since we got all this stuff opened up, well, national standard for classrooms is another 2 feet bigger, you know, for kids' space. Okay, and then, so you just started compounding, we're not gonna get this far into it, I think is overwhelming to start. That's one thing, but for the most part, as you mentioned, why the vote failed, it's obviously the dollar amount that. And, yeah, just having the public educated properly.
Yeah, the snowball effect on it. So that's a good one. Anything else?
Those are the only question we're supposed to answer, right?
What, and did we miss anything on what's needed to be done? You know?
Moving forward to the next step. What do you mean?
No, just, you know, as far as all of this information, did this information miss anything? That you guys have gone through?
I think that was from the last meeting, we talked to the people that are here every day.
Yeah.
Everybody said,
No, yeah.
get the HVAC fixed.
Yeah.
That's kind of top priority, and I guess I don't know much about the plumbing, but that sounds pretty important, I guess.
We followed a very old pipe today.
Yeah.
And saw where it flowed through the building. Great, perfect. Snowball effect of kind of, we call it scope creep or, you know, triggering events or whatever. That's good. That's not something that we specifically brought up. You guys?
I think in addition to what we already talked about, communication And the difference between needs and wants, I think is probably.
Yeah, I think that came up in a survey a little bit, so. Yeah, what was a want versus a need? And,
We didn't like one, we just.
oh, I'm just curious, like in your opinions, like I think the expanding the room, maybe you call that as a want, not a need.
Yeah.
What else?
Remodeling the classrooms as well.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I understood how like they came about that, like remodel the classroom, because all the ceilings are open anyway, so you already got to redo ceiling grid, so you might as well knock out the wall that's kind of there at the same time before you do ceiling grid. So I did see where they were going with that, but like Drew's kind of saying, you're starting to add up more and more and more, and some of them might be unnecessary, but that might have been how the public saw it too.
For sure. Our goal will be to chop as much. I mean, the goal will be to cut as much as we possibly can. Like, that's our goal. I think that's probably your y'all's goal too. What else? Any other reasons it didn't pass?
You wanna go to my group? Are you guys?
We can, or you guys?
We said, like, if maybe there was, as far as the information that went out, like, more options. Here's this option, and this option. Maybe you'd have more success. Broken down info, easier to digest, maybe not so much of it. And then the one thing that we brought up with it that was different, I guess, would just be like, I don't know how well the tax impact or like calculator was communicated, or people actually dove into that for themselves. I don't know. I don't know if that was one of the survey questions or not at the end of it. Like, did you actually figure out what your personal tax? I'm sure most people did, but it's just a question I have.
Did folks in this room use the calculator? Find it accessible?
Or did they do it correctly?
Yeah.
How many times did they come into you and you had showed it to them? And it was a totally different number
You
than
were
they
using
got.
the wrong number.
That's what I was thinking. The wrong number was the initial problem.
We see that, like,
Yeah.
as a typical thing that happens. Being clear and concise on the calculator and what exactly the true and full value is. And getting people to understand that that's the number they need to put into it. It's, we deal with that every.
I know we were here, and it's gonna cost you $50 an acre, where no, it's gonna cost you $3 an acre. And that was part of the misinformation that just wasn't done.
Yeah, we have, and we'll do that for you guys, and we can show you here in a minute when I exit out of here, but we show the ballot, and then we show a property tax statement, and then we circle the box where those two numbers match, and then we show the formula, and then exactly how you can get to it. Because that's the number one thing is, what's my taxable value? Well, no one should really have that memorized, you know, it's your true and full value, it's not your true and full value, right? So you gotta play with that. Good one, okay?
We can pull that up later.
Yeah, I'll pull it up here in a second. Yeah. You guys wanna-
Let's show that.
I did cover pretty much everything. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure what you're explaining is what we had. We had a copy of tax statement box from it. Use this number
Yeah, probably.
here.
So yeah, this is the example of the one for data center. It's tiny writing, but trying to get folks to look in the right spot.
You know,
Yeah.
I think what we said, we talked about a lot of different things that occurred. But what it really came down to is what we were talking about. I think trust was a big thing. I think a wall went up pretty quick. Yeah. If it could have been broken down better for us, then I think people would have had a better idea of where their money was going.
Is that the crux of the trust issue, is just explaining where the money was going?
I think it was a detail. There seemed to be one detail on every every nut and bolt and screw and everything, which wasn't gonna happen because it wasn't stated, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't engineered, it wasn't architect.
Was there community tours that took place?
I think my personal opinion is that when it's first started, we were trying to get engagement and get the community involved, and we did mailings, we did it on the website, we did it in the paper, we stopped at places. And I just don't think people cared until 3 weeks before the election, and then they went to with the website, and they plugged in their number. But, yeah, I'm not old.
Well, I shouldn't say it's funny. It's ironic or very clear that you said that like the 3 weeks. So, well, it looks like there's someone wanting to get in the room. We'll go through this process. This will take time. We'll have to do, if you guys decide to have a recommendation to the board, if the board decides to go forward with the vote. We spend a lot of time making sure we have all the right information. Hopefully you guys will stay along to check that information, because that's something that we'll actually share with you guys to make sure we're representing what was said, we're representing what to accomplish. But we really don't actually try to push information heavy, like it's always gonna be public, but we try to really make sure that people, public meetings, if you do a mailing, if you do tours, it's 3 weeks before is all you really do. Because if you get people engaged and excited about it 2 months before, everybody's forgot. Even 5 weeks before, people forget. So it will be interesting, because if you guys do decide that this is something you want to move forward, the board decides, there'll be a cooling period of, we'll have a month where we're just getting all the possible information, simple, concise, ready, and then it doesn't all go out until a few weeks before, just because we want people to remember it. It'll be on the website. We're just not like pushing it down people every single day, because people just hear it and forget. So you'll see that, and hopefully that makes sense, but it's very accurate that you said that, because that's what we see. Okay, so we've got a couple of new things, and I think some things to steer around. Anything else from the group that we need to document? And again, like, we're taking minutes, this will all be public, that needs to be shared, that we need to know, like, we just need to know this if we're gonna be successful. Is there anything else that you guys are feeling?
I don't know if anywhere near a bond like this would even pass, just in what I've heard. It's, one comment was, there's a bond. No, I did. And I threw $1 million out. No.
I mean, based on the amount of yes vote you had, and based also on the amount of the responses where people seem to get it. Yeah, I mean, if the project isn't cut in half, it almost seems like a tall, why even bother? So we feel that as well, and we're gonna go through this and try to find the most efficient, creative way to handle this. But for sure, I mean, 42%, that's a chunk, but you need to basically double the amount of people voting yes. So that, to me, that's not a slight change.
And, one of the things we'll also try to accomplish throughout this process is, what if the district continues to do nothing? What if the $29.6 million deferred maintenance continues to grow over time to a number that's crazier than 29.6 million? What happens then? And so I think it's very important to be able to explain to your community, like, hey, if we're deficit spending and we're using general fund dollars now to, pay for building fund needs, what does that do to maybe programs, maybe activities and down the line? So I think one of the things we will help, shape and come up with is the documentation that says, this is the second time a bond is placed in front of you. This is the reality of the situation 10 years down the road, if we're gonna continue just to kick the can. And the 29.6 million turns into 50 million, 60 million, 75 million over time. So I think that's an important piece of information that we would want to share with the community. We all have to obviously agree on what that is and what that looks like. and we can help you dive into that data.
Shannon, what was the number that you could use, like they did the, hallway with? What was that term that you didn't have to get a vote for that? What was that?
What we did, what y'all used the money for here, what was? I mean, for the
Building bond.
building
For the
fund?
central office, you mean?
Yeah.
What bond is that?
Oh, that was the building fund. They levied the building, a couple of building fund.
Was that like 2.4, 2.7?
Oh.
Well, what you guys did is you went from 10 million to 20 million in your building fund. 10 mils to, yes, sorry, 10 mils.
We talked about it before, that you could actually take it as a lump sum, almost like a line of credit.
What's the maximum?
Yeah. well,
I think that she said between 5 and 6 million, but that would take our entire building fund to make those payments every year.
Okay.
We wouldn't have any money left.
So half of it would be more of a doable number, if that's what it came down to. 2.5. If it came down to that.
I mean, there's always options that or things on the table, and we always encourage to try to not borrow against that. And to use it for maintenance, and to take building projects to the voters is always what we encourage, like the maintenance, building fund is supposed to be for maintenance. So that you don't build up deferred maintenance, and building projects should go to the public to vote. But there's situations where you have.
Worst case scenario.
Yeah, 100%.
I'll just give you a reference. If you look, we had a $10 million project, total project, and we bonded 3 million of the 10 million out of the building fund, asked the public for 6 million, 6.9 million. I think it actually was that we asked the public for. So we did a combination. You can do that as well.
I don't know if this question was answered before, but when that, in July, when that last gym payment's done, that 20 mils,
It's not.
It's about 5 mils.
5 mils?
Yeah, like that, yeah.
Okay, is that what this? Would you have to revote on that, put that back on, or can that just stay on? Those dollars will come available?
That's already, those 20 mils are already coming in. But so we get the 20 mil payment, and then we take the 5 mil payment off there, and then we have the 15 mils left to, use for the building fund.
Yeah.
It's only,
we
it's
don't.
only the 5 mils that will drop off.
No, we don't have to drop off any of them.
Okay,
because
so
the
that
vote
money will
was-
just be available.
Yes,
Because the vote was back in the
2001.
eighties, maybe, or 2001,
I thought that's
that
what
they
I said.
went to 20 mils. So the board can choose to do anything from
Anything
1
up,
to
yeah.
20.
2001.
any
And
year.
20 is a max. the school district
Yeah.
can levy in.
Yeah.
So it just frees it up and it's up to the board.
I probably wrote that down. What was that dollar amount then for that gym payment?
110.
100.
The 110, I think, is the principal, and then there's a little bit of interest.
So it's
fees
five,
on-
it's 5 mils worth of.
Yeah, about 5 mil.
That's good question. Anything else? All right, appreciate that. So, potential solutions. So I think that folks already have ideas. I think that I would like to formalize those, if that's all right, and get some specific asks for our engineers outside of what's just a less costly solution. But, does anyone want to knock down that building? I would say, not walking through that building and not knowing how nice it was, and just thinking it was a 1919 building, right, or 1923 building. An uneducated person might say, well, just knock that down. What is it, 6 classrooms? And then you go up there and it's like, oh, wow, it's a totally different story. My first thought of, spending $16 million to do a mechanical system, among some other things, on potentially if it was 8 classrooms, to me, that seems silly. I was like, why not just knock it down? But you can very clearly see that the space is great. The amount of square footage you have is really amazing, and the amount of usable learning space. I don't even think, there's some storage that you could clear out, but in reality, there's these long, narrow classrooms kind of all over the place. I don't know if you guys have been into the Valley Cities High School, 3rd floor. There's a long, tiny classroom. There's one that's long and tiny, has like a stage at the end of it. Like, you guys don't have that. Like, you guys have just nice rectangular classrooms that I think are adequate in size. You can get portable. you guys wanna just say, never mind, and let's just get some portables and put them on the lawn and those will have air conditioning, those will be ADA accessible, those will have restrooms.
I actually did get a phone call from someone that said, well, has anybody talked about adding 6 classrooms to the center? And having a high school in the center?
So let's take 4 minutes. And if you guys could just do the same groups of 4. And what are the other oddball, not oddball, random thought, well thought out thought? Just what else can we bring to the table? To just make sure that we're not just repeating, we're not just going down the same path without thinking about other things.
And these are all things that we will, vet too,
Yes.
you know, because it's also important that when we get to community meetings, if you do a referendum and the community is asking, well, did you consider this? We can say, yes, we did consider that. This is what we found. And so any question the community asks, we want to be able to answer saying, absolutely, we dug into that. We looked at adding 6 classrooms to the center, and this is the positives and this is the negatives of that. And this is why the committee decided yes with that, or this is why the committee decided no with that. So even your oddball ideas that you might have are important to bring to the table at this point in time.
So let's break. And we'll come back.
It's gonna walk with them going back and forth. Half those classrooms at the center, I've never do that. So there's, if you add, classrooms to the center, I'm not sure. So cost, you would basically add 8 classrooms.
Okay.
8 classrooms. For like,
They are, we're starting to have, as in, they are. Something like that, or.
Very north side. Yes. Yes, it's something.
School in for September, October, and then November, December, January, and then the winter week.
Since they started putting all those musicals in. It's a 480 building.
Some of us are around.
Doing all these little stuff, air conditioning.
Yeah, it is.
That's just one. So I thought about doing this here too. Give straight electrical. I mean, it could be doable, but I wouldn't want to be financially.
It is.
I don't see how. Yeah, but even that's. Auto sewing.
well, it's only the kids are over here.
Yeah, but that's 17.
But I support it too, like, it's like, it's like even, the shops only use like 1 or 2 hours a day. The cooking classes only use like 3 hours. And it's very underutilized the way it is. I mean.
Yeah, that's something I don't see.
It's a great space.
Oh.
Like I said, I was suggesting something called, as we talked about that, but they included that that's kind of where high school was 10 years old someday. So I really need to go get to high school, we just. So all those things.
If you build the flag, it still takes. You build the guy.
I asked. This is what he just closed the top floor out, there's a lot of stuff on the top floor.
Yeah, I think you would just.
Maybe change a lot of it.
So it's,
You still have a lot of the trails, it would just be a different.
They don't pee.
So those ones are first generation where they only did.
So that's what's gonna replace or replace.
So those I get, you know, as they burn out, you just get to replace what, exactly what they.
Other than.
Right.
As long as whatever. Let's say that they're only 1.5 ton or something, or 3 tons to do the heating.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I don't think that, you know, all the ones that you see a problem as you have replaces outside units. Inside.
You just find out. You don't have
Yeah, so the gym and stuff like that, you would be able to go, let's just say, individual classrooms to do it, mini splits, but then you gotta run the electrical all to them. You gotta do all this line set. The easiest way to do it would be pop it straight through the wall and hang them.
But you look at.
Probably not the best idea either, but also run off electrical and then the services on each floor cannot handle to do all this. It would be a huge service. Because we did kind of look at that, I think about a year ago, Chad and I, sorry, just.
Yeah, but you gotta have that.
It can be done, but I don't think you're gonna like.
No.
And that would be, it would be. So then you gotta look at it, they do have some houses, here.
Yeah, they started that every house, remember, they now.
Yeah, I think.
Everybody had the opportunity, where's it at?
Deal with the refrigeration. They're talking about making that.
My taxes just. That's another thing.
Freezer.
There is, yeah.
Just having that used engine make the whole.
Right, and maybe it's, like, actually, think about that. They would have to do.
Everybody ready to come back?
Yeah, the big one, yeah, so that's making that. That would be. No, there's.
Who wants to go first this time? Guys?
And these.
Yeah, we'll go first. We didn't really have anything. I know we talked about like,
Before you.
you know, the whole high school over and build a building onto the center. I mean, still, like Dave said, that would cut down on a lot of costs, busing kids back and forth, movement back and forth. There would still be movement back and forth, because you got your eds and your library and your lunch and whatnot, but it would cut down on it.
Yeah.
Put all the high school up there. So we talked about, you know, the idea of just replacing the chiller and with the used unit and then we were just talking about the kitchen, like how do you fix the refrigeration problem, freezing problem? You know, rent a truck that just park there and leave there, or Bobby said there was talk of converting the freezer that's currently there and converting the whole room to a freezer.
Sure.
basically.
A whole walk-in, instead of
Yeah.
having the pantry and then the
Yeah.
cooler and then the freezer.
Yeah. Just convert the whole room somehow.
Yep.
I don't know, like, do that.
Get rid of the one in.
Yeah, just get rid of that one.
It still doesn't help the kitchen.
No,
Which is a
right.
problem.
Just the,
Yeah.
freezer problem. And we didn't have enough time for the rest of it. That's what we thought.
Perfect.
Dave thought it was a good idea to get portables because it would cover up a lot of grass. And he didn't have to mow.
Okay, we got that on record. Yeah. I mean, we 100%, we have to just know what that cost is, just so that you guys know. You guys can say that that's silly, or, oh, I didn't know it was that close. You guys?
We talked about potentially moving on, but then we still have to maintain this building here, so it almost doesn't make sense on that point, because you got this building we're gonna have to fix anyway, but,
Why would you maintain?
well, because it was here still, and it's too good a building to knock down, so if we're gonna use it for part of it, because you wouldn't be able to move the gyms, you wouldn't move all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, so that probably didn't make that much sense to do that, but then we also talked like with Drew's idea, maybe we could implement Drew's idea this year so we can get our commissioning going this fall. And then, because this obviously isn't, whatever we figure out here for bigger projects isn't gonna happen for another year or two at the very earliest.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So to let that building sit without HVAC, without air conditioning for 2 more years, that seems almost best. So.
What, anything else?
That was pretty much it, wasn't
Nope.
I mean, you know, a wild idea we brought up is, I've kind of thought about, we've actually walked through it, is, let's say you throw a mini split in every classroom, there solves your HVAC problem. This building does not have the electrical service requirements, or the way it's built is a 480 building. Most mini split systems run on low voltage. You have to upgrade the whole electrical service within this building, along with running electrical to every single room and doing all that. It'd probably be a huge financial cost that doesn't really make sense when you already have a system that's kind of over here, try to make it work again.
You can ask. Just, I mean, that's something to think about. So, you know, if it's, let's just say hypothetically, like it's 3 million to do that, or it's 4 million to do it the other way. Well, at least then you know. But if it's 3 million to do that and 12 million to do it the other way, then maybe that's a different discussion.
The thing is, if you're asking the question, somebody
Yeah,
else.
some
can ask
exact
the
question, exactly.
Right, so we want finance.
Yeah. Awesome. That's,
So I think the reason a lot of these topics come up on, you know, other classrooms, and things like that, it's I don't have any kids in high school, but it's the high schoolers on the percentage of their day they're actually in the building. You know, when you're just talking some of these, maybe somebody can answer this question better than I can, but you know, if they're only in the school for 4 or 5 hours a day, you know, how much I think that kind of sticks in people's mind. It's like, man, kids are here all day, and I might be off on this, but that's just what I'm hearing. I don't, like I said, so I think that's kind of what some parents and stuff are thinking is how little some kids are actually in the school.
I think it's, yeah, and I think it depends, because my kid's there every class period except for 1.
Okay, see,
So I mean, then there's exceptions, but.
yep, so I didn't know the exact answer to that, but I
Right.
have had that
That
comment,
is a good,
that's a
that's
No, it
something
is.
that we should figure out.
that comment has been
And
made to me
it would be
before,
very,
so
pretty easy, I think, to figure out
Mhm.
what percentage of our kids are in the building, what
Right.
percentage of
Yeah.
the
I
time.
think that's why some of these,
And what percentage eat lunch?
Right.
That one, we can find out tomorrow.
yeah,
And it
good.
depends on what we're having.
So, but it goes back to, and this was brought up, of course, quality. When you're increase, and I know it's only for, what, a month out of the year, maybe at most, that we're warm.
Well, the work environment and the learning environment that.
Yeah.
so,
So if it's 5 hours of poor learning or poor working, that's,
But the building's still used all year long. When you look at the summer 8 hours, summer school.
well, yeah, I guess I wasn't thinking,
Wait,
yeah.
I think utilization
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
building in general, and then I do think how the student makeup of what their typical day is and how many students are here or there or the center. I think that's great.
That's another thing is we do that. We'll go through the programming, of the entire high school, you know, and we'll Or, well, how much is that classroom used and how much is it not used? Is there efficiencies that can be realized?
I'll touch, I've done a little homework too on this chiller idea, this used chiller. We had a company I was talking to out of Fargo. He was thinking roughly $200,000 for the used chiller as an 18 model, and they would have covered 1 year parts and labor on it. So once you get that up and running, you know, usually kind of foolproof after that. Everybody gets concerned on, well, why are they replacing it? A lot of these big hospitals and things like that, it's just part of their schedule. Okay, once it's 5 years old, it's out and you put a new one in. So it's already proven its point. And also when I was going through this process too, with this other individual, we were looking at, I was with Bobby and we looked at all the valves. Those valves are toast on changing it back over to AC. I haven't been using a lot of those, should definitely be replaced. And on top of replacing those valves, they're doing it with another hospital or someplace around where on a one pipe system, you can automate it too, to kind of have this time of year when you're switching from heating to cooling. It's not ideal, it's not perfect, but you know, you get those change valves or, oh geez, it is gonna be 90 this week, or if it's gonna be 32 like it's gonna be for next. So you have that option where you can automate that system, but with those new valves, that's just a bolt on. It's not a special valve or anything, it's just a bolt on automated system. So you can, you know, eliminate manually changing all the valves from heating to cooling, so that should help some of that. And then up on top of the roof, the chiller, I crawled on top of the roof. We walked around the chiller, checked it out, you know, obviously no guarantees on that, looked at it. You can see some scaling and things too. He figured maybe you can't hold them to it, but maybe gets another 10 years for sure out of that chiller to use what we have already there. If when the cleaning process comes, if nothing really bad happens, which it sounded like it should probably work out that well. So if you get that thing fired up too. So I think that's some pretty low hanging fruit that a guy could knock out of the way first thing, and then start tackling some of these bigger dollar items. Then we can look at fixing the floor, because I don't know if you want to fix the floor unless you got cooling, because you got swelling problems. So, you know, this time frame you can crunch down, you know, you're talking in months rather than the 2 years it would take to get through that. And I think that would show the public that we're looking outside the box, looking for ideas and how, you know, what's flexible on getting things to work.
Yeah, 100%. I would say that that's something that I've already visited with Prairie Ballot, and something that we'll encourage. And it's not unheard of. I would say that we just want to make sure that the solution probably does have some eyes on it, to just make sure it all checks out and it all makes sense. And if you're, I don't know if there are any hockey parents in here, but if you're in the Cullen Hockey Center in Moorhead, that's got an ice plant from, used ice plant from the NHL, that they have to put new ice plants, just like hospitals, and perfectly good ice plant. So they bought it and they got it for probably 2/3 the price, and it works great for them. So.
And that was the other part of my idea. If you open up these bids right now, so if it does go over the 200,000, you need to put an engineer, whatever it's gonna take to do that, that's fine. I'm ready to knock that out if it gets a little bit more expensive. But it's still there. It's still doable, and in that bid process too, you can put, you know, 1 year parts and labor on that. So you don't have somebody that comes in with a bid and grabs whatever they can find. You know, they're gonna do some research on it. They're gonna know where it came from, and they're gonna say, we own this for the next year, so we're not just gonna get something out of it.
And it's lowest responsible bidder too. That's part of the other thing about when you have specs and you bid out, I would say engineered specs, even if it's a used part, but you're bidding that out. Everyone has to meet those specifications and those requirements. And then you do have the opportunity to vet it, you know, has this company been around for a month or 10 years, you know, and it's effective, you know. Lowest responsible bidder, you have to prove something's not responsible, but sometimes you can't.
Do we only have to bid the part though, or do we have to bid labor, electrical, piping, thermostats, concrete?
Generally, when you bid that, it's bid all as a whole
This
thing.
whole project.
Yeah, so you would bid.
So your 200,000 could get upwards of 500,000.
Yeah, and let's say you were at 150, you might still want to go through the process.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not gonna be
Yeah,
$500,000, I just a ballpark start. And then I'm gonna make one more comment too on the chiller. If, you know, we were talking like an air handler unit outside, by updating this chiller, you know, if it's a whatever model, you can still get parts for it, it'll still work, things like that. If you go to that outside unit with the air cooled, those are a fair amount louder, and the simplest spot to put that would be between the two buildings, and I'd be a little concerned on the noise on something like that. These are just all my opinions and what I saw from walking around, but just
And
throw 'em
yeah,
out
and
there.
we'll push them all forward to the engineers to give us their ideas and their thoughts and hopefully they'll have ideas that are even new to us, that something else that we can think of, but understanding that budget is the number one topic, you know, is something that's important. When you lead with that, it's kind of sends the message.
But what would that look like if if maybe we do come up with a recommendation from this building committee to the board and said, hey, we want to move forward with this bidding process to update the valves, pull in some fresh air, you know, et cetera, whatever we kind of come up with to get this small thing fixed right now, move on. What would that look like? Would you guys help us to put, you know, a proposal together to open it up for bids?
Oh, yeah, yeah, we would do it. That's where we would, when you find the exact scope, and there's a lot of times that as architects, we put things to bid, even though the only architectural thing might be ceiling tile, you know, but it's just organizing it all. So instead of a big giant project that you're bidding, maybe it's a much smaller focused one that bids in a few months even, right? But going through and having specs written by an engineer so that it meets all of the different requirements. And then same thing, having warranties. And then, you know, when they provide that, they're bonded, they're licensed, you're covered. If something happens, your insurance would say, yep, okay, then they go after them, not the other way around. And yeah, that's a very normal thing, and it just depends on what the scope is. But if we're trying to act fast, and I think that we'll have all those options on the table.
Is that something we could do tonight? We could take it for the next school board meeting to try to.
I mean, we're gonna ask them to figure this 100%. I mean, we're gonna ask the engineers, they've got 4 or 5 things specifically that they need to look at. But I mean, so no matter what, we're gonna get an idea of costs and I would say solutions that aren't just going to, you know, the freight and picking it off the line, right? What are our different opportunities? What are the different solutions? But I don't know if you're trying to seek like action as far as just authorizing it. I mean, the only issue there is that I don't know exactly what we would authorize because we don't have an idea of what they think is possible and what that could cost.
So could we ask you guys now tonight to try to put something like that together, or does that have to go through the school board?
We're going to, oh yeah, I mean,
We're gonna
that's,
do that anyway.
yeah, that's the homework for us, are all of the things that you guys are saying.
So when we bring Prairie Engineering out here, we're gonna have them explore that exact idea that you talked about, right? Even though you had somebody out, I did look at it with you, but they're gonna explore that exact option, right? And then we'll have an answer for you, and like, yeah, this is what the total in cost would probably be on that, you know.
And I would say we'll probably have an idea of that before they're even on site. I think it'll be, what are the ideas and solutions, and then we come on site to confirm or deny or whatever.
How fast or slow would they come on site?
That depends on their schedule. I would say everything that you're asking now still falls under the 2 to 3 week realm of we would come back with. I would anticipate, you know, there might be 10 things that we're gonna go and get prices for you guys and get solutions. One of them will be adding on, right, and one will be portables. Like, we're just gonna answer that question. One would be knocking the whole thing down and replacing it. We're just gonna tell you what that is so we can all understand, yeah, that's not possible, right? But that way, no one can say, well, why didn't you just explore that? You know, you only got 8 classrooms there. Well, it still would be more than what we're recommending. So, yeah,
Do they have a copy of your information?
yes. Well, the last set.
I sent everything you sent me, I
Yeah.
forwarded it to them, they got it all.
Yeah, I mean, that's, our job is to answer your questions.
So
So,
at the end of the day, you guys take all that.
Yeah.
You guys will decide as a committee what you want to give to the board, but you'll have every answer that you need, you know.
yeah, I agree. What else?
I guess that's just, you know, you saying knocking this down and rebuilding it, see what it costs. I guess, another idea I just had right now is logistically to keep school running at the same time. Everyone's gonna have to find someplace to park, but build it where the parking lot is right now, right next to it, as this is still going on, and then knock this down later. That's another idea, maybe, if there's a room available. to
Yeah,
do
yeah,
it.
we have to put it somewhere. Yeah, absolutely. And for this exercise, it will literally be just a box. right? And we're just gonna say this box would be 2 stories tall, and this is how many classrooms it would be, and here is how much it costs per square foot. And we plunk it there. So it'll be, again, that'll be an answer that we can say within reasonable margin, this is how much it would cost. And you guys are gonna say that's crazy, and then we'll move on. But then that's stuff.
Is that kitchen on an exterior wall?
The back of it, yeah.
Cause you can get into those outside exterior walk-in freezer coolers for pretty cheap rather than having to come and rip walls down and demo and pour some concrete, butt it up against the building and get your outside unit.
We've
I think that
absolutely
would-
done those before, yeah.
I think that would be probably a good something to look at.
Yeah, whether it's that or even taking that other space and trying to pull out the old one and making the pantry, all that, making that into a walk-in cooler rather than a prefab one. We're gonna ask them. I'm not gonna speculate, but we're gonna ask. But keep going. What else? Yeah, I guess you guys haven't had a chance to speak.
The only thing I ever came up with, if we had to shut the high school down, we could always just do split shifts. 7 through 12 goes 6 AM to noon. Elementary goes noon to 6. And you're in one building.
Yeah. Imagine people probably would not like
That's what they do in Croatia.
I did it in junior high, that's right.
that. Sure.
Yeah,
Actually,
you
it's
have
not
to
bad
do the
solution.
6.
What's it?
But 6,
No,
not
I
the
had
6.
6 to 12.
All right, well, I mean, everything goes on the table. Okay, any more homework? One more question for you guys. Okay. So based on what we heard here, what's your number 1, what's your number 2, and what's your number 3? So each group could give us I want this handled first, this handled second, this handled third. And if that's mechanical systems, I would say probably that's one thing, the kitchen maybe is one thing, right? I think ADA restrooms or ADA accessibility, or I would say broad strokes. But it would be good to make sure that we're all in alignment, that we understand where everybody's priorities are.
Can I get some more comments on the plumbing? I don't know anything about that.
I was just saying the same thing that Drew's saying right now too.
What's the story on this plumbing? What's that exactly?
So,
What's the?
we tell them what we're doing right now.
You fixed half of it, didn't you?
We kind of did. We did the north half, the property of the high school building here. Square building, 3 floors. Probably, I think it was 3 years ago. 2 or 3 years ago, we kind of did the north half. That building was plumbed on this side in a certain way. It's kind of plumbed on the south side all the same way. Well, we ended up with a collapsed orange cast, south side down. It's kind of in the sub area. So we bypassed that at that time and put in new PVC. And so most of that side was redone and then actually taken clear out the street. The south half hasn't been. Well, Bobby was down here cleaning in the sub like one of these days and noticed it was leaking down there. And first, it was a water line that was actually leaking. Dripping off the water line and we're like, well, then he looked at blueprints and thought it was all capped from the previous build or construction project. And
It was the galvanized lines, is what was dripping up. So, yeah, when they did that, they said those were all capped and they put new copper in. So then we didn't know why it was dripping.
and just started looking more and more and
No,
tore a wall out underneath the stairway here.
right next to it.
Figured out it's actually a sewer line. Was dripping down into the dirt and then it was ended up on a water line and dripping off of that. And that 4-inch cast goes up to women's restroom on 3rd floor. And then it drops down and then the 2nd floor to the women's faculty restroom dumps in the back. And then it goes down to the sub and then goes out underneath the art room over here and catches a line that comes out here into M. And so that 4-inch riser is leaking somewhere from that second floor restroom down.
So you wanna do from second floor to where it dumps in the sewer, the whole, that's all,
Yeah,
right? If we could do it right,
we had a camera that brought a guy in, Bismarck, and he just cameraed the other day. Tuesday? Is he down there? Monday. And run a camera down from 3rd floor and which we have a video. He didn't give us video yet, but on there, it looked like, I mean, you could see that the gas is cracked, you know, for a ways, it'll be kind of good. It's all kind of corroded stuff in there, but you definitely we both looked at it, and it looks like cracks. And so these guys would reline it. And that was kind of what we got to fix it. It's either that or you put in new PVC. But personally, I would go up to 3rd floor. I would run it clear up to there and possibly out the roof. If you're gonna change that riser out, seems like you would wanna go clear up to the roof with it and down to the sub. And then at that point, what we had quoted was from 3rd floor bathroom down. And then where it ties in down the sub and heads south, we would get that line also, just because you're there. Then basically that whole side.
you mean replace it, not just line it.
Oh, pipe burst and line.
This was for lining. We got another guy coming actually tomorrow morning to give us an idea on replacing it with PVC. So we got 2 quotes.
Okay.
And can decide from there what we think would be cost effective.
How much of that is underground then?
30 feet.
Yeah, probably 30.
The 30 feet that goes underneath like those classrooms right on that edge of the building. And we did line that section from the girls' restroom in the lobby last year. Because that had given us trouble, and actually the cast iron pipe had a hole in it, see gravel in there, and they lined that from the girls' restroom out to the manhole. This would meet with that then if we lined it, same crew. It was just a thought that maybe we want to do that, and then that side of the building is pretty much, there might still be a couple smaller lines like from drinking fountains or sinks or that run into that would. But the major portion of that's where we're at.
And that bill was line it,
Like 10 grand?
no,
Yeah.
35.
35.
Oh, 35.
Yeah. Your socks off there.
I think. I just looked up what it was to mine that first section.
22, yeah.
20.
We did last year, that was 22,000 line that. It's got a 50-year, same as PVC, it's got a 50-year life expectancy. Yeah,
No, the warranty.
warranty's 2 years, I guess, but the life expectancy. So that's why we thought we'd try that in that section, because it was definitely cheaper than.
It seemed like a great solution. I think they've been using that technology for a long time.
Yeah. It was expensive, like over here, we burst pipe in the elementary, and that was $120 on that. It didn't turn out great either. We thought this was significant. I know tomorrow.
We still have plumbing stuff from the elementary though too.
Third floor down, third floor down, and then.
So that's basically everything you want. Minus if you put a stack on.
Yeah. That's pretty close. And we actually got a quote for just doing the riser. And second floor, I think. Coming from that restroom out and doing the riser was 18 grand. We just visited with him on the phone today. Telling him that we weren't sure. So you're doing, for half the money, you're doing part of the job. And it's like, I would wanna just get that site done for another 18,000, I guess. Then all that cast is lined and kind of done.
Well, let's just take a few minutes again and let's just, if you could come up with your top three priorities. You have to come up with three, just as many as you can, but it'd be good to just hear again, very clearly, this is what you want done first. Questions? Okay. 4 minutes,
Regardless of tax.
I guess.
We have one over there.
But you're learning.
All the way over there, all the way down, all the way to the east.
Yeah.
Alvin Creek is one family moved in,
I know you.
and
But we have it here.
I don't think that's ever.
We'll spend all day upstairs.
And does our bathroom count as ADA compliance? We are okay with the one bathroom we have in the lobby? Okay, it's just, I know.
None of their bathrooms are technically ADA, none of them.
None of them are.
What are the?
They were ADA 20 years ago, but now they're not picking up.
How about this one right on Tim's door right here?
We didn't see it. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was just installed, it sure should be.
I think it's wide, man. I'll take the
So
first one.
So you would say over.
I mean, we need, everything on ADA bathroom in the school hall, but I think we can. No, that's really cool.
Well.
So your HVAC is number one on your list?
HVAC is number one at plumbing.
Number
Because those two
two.
things are shut the school down.
I was just curious, no, I was
Windows.
literally.
In front of which one?
I would put it right
In front of the food and the kitchen?
there. I don't know.
We'll just say, we'll just say.
Can we not?
Well, you need to cool it, and cold the HVAC back in.
Do we have another one?
For 80.
And now.
Yeah, so those bathrooms are good. That trash can would have to move probably, because someone in a wheelchair probably couldn't clear that, but you got your 5 feet.
We have.
And even the, which were the ones where the, yeah.
I'm set up.
The ones where
A little simple.
Those ones right there.
Either the bathrooms or the chiller.
Yeah, now they fight stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, no, those are from like that, yeah.
Is that what you wanna do? Cause I think.
Those are from the.
That's right.
One bathroom. or two
Yeah,
bathrooms out.
Or whatever.
Just, I don't stuff.
And I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should.
Oh, we have. I mean, just as long as you have some reasonable,
These scooters. One family
so
moved
the
in.
issue is like, if you had a student, a female student, well, in the high school, none of that. So you have to get into the elevator and then come down here. So then it comes down to
But
like,
if
is
you're
that
number one, I just think what it pays.
So that
And
means
then-
what you need to figure out
That's what I'm saying.
is what you actually.
Yeah.
need.
Well, yeah, I had to put a chair. Oh,
Well, they both.
but yeah, but they're out through the open.
But they're, yeah, right.
Okay, so you're talking about these ones.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
it might be
like-
right. Let's see what- Oh, yeah, that should be fine.
And I think,
And it's, priority, prioritization, just money. To start with,
So this plumbing issue, did Dave just say that basically $35,000?
Here on the.
6 months out. 3,500 will take care of the plumbing, Dave? Hey, Dave, 3,500 will take care of the plumbing?
Yeah.
I
mean, that's-
But plumbing?
Say, just say.
Problem.
We're doing our list, we're just doing our list of
All right.
hierarchy.
This goes back to.
Hierarchy needs.
right now,
What is it?
they,
I see.
they want to be and part of it.
And how much, I would recommend.
Oh.
There's specific things or whatever.
Yeah.
That's.
I think that's all.
Yeah.
Yes, if we give it.
I think that.
The HVAC.
We'll just make the comment that we'll see if plumbing goes out.
All right. Guys, your comments to the close?
We have no.
We're good? All right, you guys take the lead off this time.
We got top 4.
Oh, extra credit, that's great.
Overachievers.
So, yeah, we have like HVAC, plumbing.
One is,
Number 1 is HVAC, number 2 is plumbing, and then we're kind of in the toss between, I guess for number 3 would be at least an ADA bathroom in the high school, and then the kitchen cooler.
all right, who wants to go next?
We can go next, or on this side of the room. So our 1, 2, and 3 were HVAC, kitchen, plumbing. And we talked about how it's very hard for us to, some of us, to like separate HVAC into just do the chiller, just do the windows, just do the whatever. So we decided just.
Yeah, that's fair.
We do have an asterisk. We have maybe something you guys could look into or that we need to help look into. But like, we started the discussion with the kitchen, like. If we updated the kitchen, would that change the food served to the students? Are we not serving certain meals because we don't have certain equipment? Like, or I don't know the answer to those. We were just having.
This is the adequacy of the
Conversation.
space. Are you limiting the program of your food services, just
I-
like if you're limiting a.
I know that I have a limited knowledge of what the rules are, but I know we're purchasing certain things because they meet the requirements. But are we also purchasing certain things because we can't make an alternative thing? I just don't know.
That's
the
an
answer.
easy question to ask, I think. Yeah, that's a good question.
I guess this probably sounds stupid or since I'm an old guy here, but my thoughts are, and I say to these guys, it's like, I come from a day where we had like 80 kids in the classroom. Now we have half that. And that kitchen was used then. Maybe it's small, I don't know. So the thing is that is the space big enough? That's where we got into this discussion about, or don't we have the right equipment to make better food or something? You understand what we're saying there?
I think that's a new homework item. Is it really justified, to get new space versus maybe there's better equipment that's more efficient and it works just fine in that space?
And upgrade the equipment that's in there.
Sure.
In the freezer, the fridge or whatever, but does it have to be twice that size?
I asked this question a few years ago. to, I think, the previous superintendent. And I said, the kitchen was made to prepare food. It seems like they're reheating packaged food now. Wouldn't it be cheaper and better if we made food again? And he said, I agree with you, but I can't even hire people to reheat the food. So he said, so it might be right. Maybe the kitchen was designed to prepare food. Now we're just reheating food. That's kind of what I was told a while ago.
Perfect.
We have, 4, we had, 2 is the bathrooms, 3 was the plumbing, 4 was the kitchen. And number 1 was the whole heating, air conditioning, windows, and fire suppression system.
Yeah, so that's a good point. Because we haven't really talked about fire suppression, and that is a pretty big dollar amount. And depending on what you do, you might be required to. That's something that we're, if it's a engineer's decision, building official decision, state official's decision. We'll get to that when it comes, but I think we've said before, we are anti-kids on fire. That's our stance. But it is very costly, so we understand that it's not always something that can happen.
So who makes that final decision? Who decides?
So it depends on if the county has any building authority jurisdiction. Do they, does the county have a building official? Do they hire out from Bismarck? Probably that's the case. So what'll happen then is that as we go through this, it could be a combination of fire marshal, building official, engineer, architects, all of that grouped together. Because it's not clear. If you modify the space, technically you need to bring it up to code. But what's modifying space? And that's what we go to argue. And sometimes you have to do it, sometimes you don't.
Can you repeat your 2, 3, 4?
ADA bathrooms. Plumbing. Kitchen.
Right.
We talked about the plumbing right away too, but I think if sounds like that ball's kind of rolling already, just get that fixed. So just kind of leave that, just assuming that that's gonna get fixed how it is. There we go. The chiller idea. Which I did have some fresh air stuff too that earlier to tie into that. Chiller idea is 1, the HVAC, and then 2 is a kitchen, and then 3 was ADA.
Do you think this would line up with the public? Do you think the public, if we just brought them in here?
So I'll make a comment on that, just thinking from when I was looking at this sheet on doing things, and as soon as you guys said plumbing, it popped into my head, trying to remember off the sheet, and for some reason I had $600,000 stuck in my head. We were so shot, and we found it on here, it's $551,000. Is that the same plumbing that we're talking about right now, or is that, this is
a new problem that just happened the other day.
What plumbing were they talking about on that? Dave? The one you did for $135,000?
No, we just did a small part of the line, but that was $200,000 or 200,000, but that was just a small part of that. We still have the west wing, the south wing around are unknown by the.
Okay.
Yeah, that last plumbing project, we did in elementary.
Yeah, and that was there.
That was in there too, but that was to obviously replace that kind of funding. So then it was obviously more to do that.
Yeah, we'll get that. It's in here, but we're gonna have it checked.
We'll have it broken down.
Yeah, underground sewer pipe bursting allowance. Yeah, so there's a couple things. Okay, we got that. So I think just the last little bit is just any more questions or things you want us to go and uncover. So between now and our next meeting, our goal is that we've answered all of your questions and that we can sit here, review them, and then you give us fresh.
What do portables cost? Do you buy them or do you rent them?
Either one. It just depends.
Surrey is, they're on a 10-year they're on their 10th year of renting for
Yes, and your
right
lease,
now.
yeah.
Cost. Cannot remember, but they're going away from it because they've had a number of code violations. So they have a corridor that's leading to them from their existing school, and they have to get that changed, and a number of items that have come up now with them that they have to get fixed. And so they're looking at replacing their 10 classroom portable with, or the 12 classroom portable with 12 new classrooms that are gonna be obviously permanent. But I can find out what they're paying.
Well, and Wilton just installed some.
Well,
We'll get there first.
Why are they installing these?
Cause they can't get
They're bursting it.
yeah, they can't, their classrooms were overflowing and they couldn't get a vote pass. Wilton did get a vote pass, but we had to get portables for a year while construction's going on, or 2 years.
And Wilton experiencing, you know,
Growth.
exponential growth out of Bismarck. So
Understanding their exponential goal was to go from 190 to 220, kids, or whatever. Still, just keep everything. in
you
perspective.
see them when you have no space and you're having trouble passing some sort of referendum to build new space. They're a temporary fix.
Yes. But we can.
I've never seen them last longer than they've lasted. It's pretty, 10 years. It's quite remarkable that they, and they're just renting. They're just paying.
Right, and then they have to have water and toilet.
Oh, they have to be code compliant. They have to have ramps, water, toilets,
Yeah.
all this stuff. Yep.
But your first statement, when you started today, that doesn't seem to me that we should be looking.
Well, let's just get the price.
at.
No, we just want to uncover every question
Yeah.
that is
Because
gonna happen.
someone will ask, and it's better to have the answer.
I mean, even if somebody doesn't ask the question, at least, I mean,
We have it.
we have to be able to answer everybody's question as a committee.
That's our goal. That's why, if you have any. That's what when I say oddball, I'm trying to encourage, knock the whole thing down, build it here, build it there, just because someone might ask, and it's easy for us to get these answers at a high level now versus standing in front of a, public meeting or whatever and not having.
And that's why we encourage, like, as a committee now, you guys will go out and, I think it's important that you talk about these issues with, I'm on this committee, and we talked about what are the solutions at the high school or at the school district. And, ultimately, some of those folks are gonna ask you, well, did you ever consider this, or did you do this, and if it's something that we haven't discussed, then it's a thing to bring back to us next meeting, so that we can, address that. We will utilize all of our partners, engineers, and everything we've got available to us, that we'll be able to answer every question that you're getting asked out in the community as well. Because at the end of the day, again, we want no stone left unturned, right?
And that will always be our first agenda item going forward. After this meeting, it's just, what have you heard? What do we need to know as a committee or as the people working for you? And that's very, very important. So this isn't a closed group, and, share everything we've talked about. And if you get any feedback that you think we need to know,
And you have access, like, you can get access to our contact information, like, if you have a question, from somebody in the community that you can't answer, but you know that we may be able to answer, and they want it right away, by all means, we want Anna to share our contact information so that we can get that answered for you. Or if you're laying awake at night, and you thought of something, like, we're open book, so.
if it's late at night, it's Travis. Only. You can CC me later.
So-
And I'll give you an answer in 1 minute, and he'll give you an answer in 45, so.
Leroy wanted to know the number, so we paid drain services $217,250 in 2021 for the elementary bathroom. I'm not exactly sure, this is before my time, so I'm not exactly sure what exactly happened back there. Mark, I think you were in on that a little bit with the kitchen.
I didn't really deal with it, but we were doing small renovations in there at the time, and so I got to see some of the aftermath. I actually have pictures on my phone of them digging like 10-foot holes into the ground in the middle of the hallways and.
I think we had porta potties at the same time, didn't we? So whatever was done that year, that was $217,000.
Basically from if you're familiar over here with where the restrooms are, it was from that hallway underneath the restrooms to faculty room here, turned and then went straight north out through the kitchen and hooked into the street. And that was first.
In diversity, they still have to dig in for any transition. Basically. That's why there was a big hole in the hallway in the staff room.
But that's right.
Was that an option to line that? Could you line it?
They did, they burst it, basically.
It's a little different than this lining you're talking
That's
about.
different, yeah, because they're getting rid of the old pipe, where this is their lining, the old pipe.
That's,
So you still have,
that's like a new pipe that they pull inside the other pipe.
Could that have been done a different way as what I'm wondering? Could it have been lined like you're talking about?
Probably could have been.
maybe, yeah. There was a dip in that one that they burst out. And that's the problem with the line going down the hallway, is that's underneath water, just because of how it is. So if you line that, you're still gonna have the same issue.
You're talking going
Straight west, yeah.
from that.
That whole hallway is, the plumbing is underwater. Like the pipe is full of water at all times,
Not all the way down,
3/4 of the way down.
like to the wash,
No, yeah,
right?
So you're saying it doesn't have
Along
enough
the
slope on
cafeteria,
it, it never has a dips in,
I just-
that's why it's full.
yeah.
I assume.
No, not the west wing. So it's probably, yeah, like 15 feet of, that's underwater. So you can't, lining that wouldn't fix that problem at all. You pretty much have to dig that up and tear up that whole hall.
But you could burst it.
But you'd still have to dig up the hallway to burst it.
This one, that's after the.
You'd have to do at least 2, because you're gonna have to have one on each end wherever you're,
Turns.
and then wherever there's lines coming into it, you have to have access to that. So depending on where lines are coming in.
But then it still works.
When they burst that underneath the bathroom there, they found an area where that pipe goes through like a concrete footing. We couldn't get through that. So then they had to tunnel down underneath there, and I mean, guys were even scared, like they're gonna get buried under there. So, waiting, but then, you know, they had to jackhammer the concrete on just so they could burst pipes to receive. You run into all sorts of that. So yeah, they got involved in.
Well, I'll just say that we got a lot of good information here. If something comes to you, I would say reach back out to Anna and she'll loop us in. Anything else comes up, don't hesitate. I think we're going to probably need 3 weeks for our next meeting, if that's all right with folks. I just don't know that we can do all of this in 2. Sometimes it'll be 2, but I'd say most of the time it's 2. But this feels like this might be a bigger ask.
Instead of May 7th, it needs to be 14th.
Well, actually, that doesn't work. Let's just keep it May 7th. And just know if for some reason we don't have an answer, I guess let's just meet and then that way you'll know. I think you push people.
And Drew, just to your question earlier, if we do have it the 7th, our meeting's the 16th, so it would be before the board meeting. Oh, yeah, would you guys be okay meeting earlier than 7:30?
Does take the record for like the latest running meeting that we generally attend. All good. You guys are on the field.
You guys do 6? The 7th?
Also, just a note, if you do have questions for Anna, please only do Anna, don't use the whole committee text or chain or email, because that violates open records.
Everybody do 6?
Does anybody?
9?
Good. know, we're gonna be in the middle.
Zoom you in.
You talking time?
Yeah,
6 PM start time, what you're saying?
Yeah, whenever.
how about 7?
I'll do it through.
Can we do 7? 6:30?
It doesn't matter to us, we're here to be here and do what you guys want.
6:30?
We can stay at the Harvest Inn.
I'll send out an invite and case that. I know one thing that, the board members are going to be wanting to know is, okay, this is a longer commitment than originally that they asked you to be, so I'm sure the board member that reached out to you will probably be reaching out to you again to just ask you if you're on board, if you're willing to commit to this to help out in this process. There'll be more meetings than they originally thought, so.
I've been told that like cookies go a long way, just saying. All right, thank you guys so much for your time. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Now we're gonna-
I can't-